I do remember 1984. Madonna was taking over the airwaves, and Michael Jackson's Thriller was huge. And yeah, everything was pretty good if you were the Oilers in 1984. Now, sadly, you still have a Norris division, and the Norris division winner has the unenviable task of trying to knock off the Edmonton Oilers in a conference final. So the division finals that year were between the St. Louis Blues, who'd knocked out Detroit 3-1 in round one, and the Minnesota North Stars, who'd knocked out Chicago 3-2 in round one. The winner would end up being Minnesota, but they would get swept by Edmonton in the next round because Edmonton was pretty darn near unstoppable that year. Now, the North Stars did have home ice advantage in this series with St. Louis. 39-31-10 was their overall record, 345 goals scored, which was fifth. Goals against, 344, which was 16th. So that's problematic. On the St. Louis side, 32-41-7 was their overall record, 293 goals scored, which was 16th. 316 goals against, which is 12th. Keep in mind, there's only 21 teams in the league. So both of these teams are in the bottom half when it comes to goals against. And Minnesota's a much better scoring team. So what that tells you is, then your winner should be probably Minnesota, but defensively, they're kind of a mess. And there should be a lot of goals in this series. And there really, really kind of sort of isn't a lot of goals in this series. What people remember from this era, of course, is all the goal scoring. And, the goaltending was terrible. That's overly simplistic. It really, really is. Now, the interesting thing with this one is first periods are not periods that see scoring in the first three games. So game one, no scoring in the first. Second period, for the Minnesota North Stars, Napier scores from Cicerelli and Maruk at 12-12 on the power play. So what he did was, all the Minnesota goals are in green and all of the Blues goals are in blue. So it's 1-0 Minnesota after one. Second period, I don't have tiny magnets for the Minnesota North Stars. I really wish I did. For the North Stars, for the Nordiques, for the Jets, the original Jets, the Whalers. Shorthanded goal by Hickey in the third period from Gilmore and Bothwell at 6:07 ties it up. But about 2 minutes later, Dino Cicerelli scores what would prove to be the winner from Neil Broughton and Brad Maxwell at 8:23. So Minnesota wins game one at home. Don Beaupre saves 23 out of 24 in the win. Mike Liut saves 39 out of 41 in the loss. So Liut plays great. Game two, St. Louis rewards him for that. Again, no scoring in the first period. Second period, Maruk scores from Bellows and Napier at 6:58 for the North Stars. Gonchar then scores from Fedorko and Babic at 12:33. Now, don't get Gonchar. It's Gonchar, right? Yeah. Confused with Gonchar, who came over from Russia. This was a Canadian kid, so Gonchar. Anyways, Levy would score to restore the lead for the Minnesota North Stars from McAdam and Roberts at 17:18. Willie Plett then scores from Acton and Roberts at 17:47. So I've discussed Willie Plett a couple of times recently. Third period, St. Louis would push for the tie. First, it's Pettersson on the power play from Gonchar and Gilmore at 4:21. Mullen then ties it from Sutter and Ramage at 7:30. So there's Brian Sutter. The Islanders video yesterday, I talked about Brent Sutter and Dwayne Sutter, and there's Brian Sutter. So we go to overtime. In the overtime, it's 16 minutes and 16 seconds. It's Doug Gilmore from Tim Bothwell, and the North Stars lose at home in game two. Liut saves 35 out of 38 in the win. Beaupre saves 32 out of 36 in the loss. So we go to St. Louis for game three. In game three, no scoring in the first. Second period, Pichette scores from Pettersson and Reeds at 16:27 to make it 1-0. Third period, I should say, Doug Wickenheiser scores unassisted at 13:22. Fedorko then scores from Delorme and Sutter at 14:05. That's Gilbert Delorme, not Ron Delorme. Ron Delorme did not play for the Blues. Maruk then scores on the power play to break up the shutout from Bellows and Broughton at 17:35. But other than breaking up the shutout, it doesn't do anything else to the game. Beaupre saves 32 out of 35 in the loss. Mike Liut saves 24 out of 25. 2.5 minutes away from a shutout. But I'm sure he's fine with that. They get the win. So game four. Minnesota does what nobody has done to this point in the series. They score in the first period. And it's Acton scoring from Maxwell and Bellows at 39 seconds. So they got it started early. Paslowski then scores from Hickey and Babic at 6:08 to tie it up. Then we have a shorthanded goal by Brian Bellows from Brad Maxwell at 16:54. So it's 2-1 Minnesota after one. Second period, Tom McCarthy on the power play from Cicerelli and Maruk at 8:01. Fedorko then scores from Sutter and Ramage at 13:58. That makes it 3-2 in favor of the Minnesota North Stars. Third period, that's the period with no scoring in this game. Minnesota holds on and wins it. So Minnesota ties the series. Beaupre, 31 saves on 33 shots. Liut, 23 saves on 26 shots. So statistically, Liut's saddest game of the series, but still, his stats are pretty smart, pretty good. And yeah, they will be good throughout this series, other than this game here. So 23 saves on 26 shots, not bad, pretty good. But then they go to Minnesota for Game 5. Game 5, Minnesota, it's Payne that scores from Acton at 10:50, I should say. Levy then scores from Acton and Cicerelli at 18:40. So 2 goals in the second half of that first period. Minnesota goes up 2-0. Third period, Acton scores from Giles and Payne at 15:27. So Acton with 3 points in that game. Keith Acton. 3-0 after 2 periods. Third period, Maruk scores from Ashton and Plett at 12 minutes. Then Plett scores from McAdam at 12:26. And then Broughton scores from Cicerelli and McAdam at 14:03. They run up the score in that third period. They end up winning at 6-0. Liut is in goal for 5 of them. 17 saves on 22 shots. He's replaced by Rick Hines, who saved 1 out of 2. And at the other end of the rink, Don Beaupre, 29 saves on 29 shots for the Minnesota North Stars. So we go to Game 6 in St. Louis. Minnesota now up 3-2. And in the first period is Bernie Fedorko from Sutter and Ramage at 11:21. So it's 1-0 St. Louis after 1. And they would keep it up. Joey Mullen at 4:42 of the second period makes it 2-0. Then we go to the third period where Wayne Babich adds to the lead from Wickenheiser and Delorme at 9:28. And then a power play goal, it's Ganchar from Pichette and Pedersen at 11:18. Ganchar, that's how you pronounce it. See, it takes a while because you get used to Gonchar and then you see it and you go, okay, I can't say Gonchar, it's Ganchar, okay. Beaupre, 29 saves on 33 shots in the loss. Mike Liut makes all 32 saves. He gets his shutout here that he didn't get here. So close to 2 shutouts in this series. Liut was pretty darn good. In an era where people talk about goaltending not being very good, Mike Liut was very good. So we go to Game 7. And this one, this was kind of an action-packed kind of game. Not a whole lot of ugliness in this series, though. When you look at the overall penalty minutes, over 7 games, it was a combined 180 penalty minutes. So it's not an overly dramatic series when it comes to fights and brawls and stuff. Really, not so much. And this has been the storyline between Minnesota and St. Louis and now Dallas and St. Louis. They meet each other a lot. It doesn't feel quite as hotly contested, though, as some of the other series I've covered. So first period, Plett scores from Ashton and Roberts at 11:28. That's Gordy Roberts. Power play goal then, Brian Sutter from Fedorko and Pichette at 15:05 ties it up. Second period, no scoring in that period. We go to the third. Gordy Roberts scores a shorthanded goal from Acton and Bellows at 1:34. Pedersen then scores from Gilmore and Delorme at 8:52. And then Reeds scores a shorthanded goal from Wickenheiser and Ramage at 14:06. So St. Louis has a lead. They have a lead for 15 seconds. Plett scores from Roberts and Beaupre at 14:21. So Beaupre starts the play up the ice, and it's finished off by Willie Plett. And in overtime, it's Steve Payne with the goal at 6 minutes to propel Minnesota into the next round, where they're probably celebrating. And St. Louis is going, they're going to get the beat out of them by the Oilers. Enjoy that, guys. Enjoy the Oilers. We're gonna see in about a week on the golf course, aren't we? So Liut saves 39 out of 43 in that last game. Beaupre saves 25 out of 28. Pretty solid series for both goaltenders. Like I said, 180 combined penalty minutes in the series, just to show that this was not anywhere near as ugly as some of the other ones I've covered. Acton had 2 goals and 4 assists to lead all scorers in the series. Keith Acton led all scorers in this series. Willie Plett, 4 goals and 1 assist. He was the goal-scoring leader in the series. Maruk, 3 goals, 2 assists. Bellows, a goal and 4 assists. Cicerelli and Gordy Roberts also had a goal and 4 assists. Gordy Roberts not known as an offensive defenseman mostly, but pretty good in this series. Beaupre 4-3 with a .922 save percentage. On the St. Louis side, Fedorko 3 goals, 2 assists. Brian Sutter a goal and 4 assists. Pedersen 2 goals, 2 assists for Jorgen Pedersen. Gilmore a goal and 3 assists. Ramage 4 assists for him, and Ganchar had 2 goals and 1 assist. Now, the interesting thing is Ganchar only played 42 games in the regular season in his entire NHL career, and he had 7 in his entire playoff career. So, again, if you've forgotten Perry Ganchar, it doesn't really surprise me. But, again, it is interesting when I'm looking back through these old series and go, right, I remember that name. I remember that player. So, Liut had a 3-4 record in the series and a .921 save percentage. So, pretty good goaltending, .922 at one end of the rink and .921 at the other. And of course, Rick Hines had a .500 save percentage on the 2 shots he faced. He was a Canuck for like 10 minutes. And he was a Canuck, and I mentioned in the video the other day, I made a Neil Bellin hockey card. I had made a Rick Hines hockey card too. And by the time I had made it, he was back with St. Louis. So, anyways, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding the 1984 series between St. Louis and Minnesota. Again, Minnesota won this series only to get just run down by the Edmonton Oilers, as everybody did that year. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.